This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
Tonight on Unspun, Charlotte didn't become a major American city by accident. It took business leaders, elected officials, and community voices finding a way, even when they didn't always agree. In a time when compromise often feels like a dirty word in politics, what can we learn from leaders who believed consensus wasn't weakness? It was how you got things done. In today's America, welcome to the spin game. Believe me, I know, I'm Pat McCrory. When I was governor and mayor, I played the spin game. I was played by the spin game. But aren't we all done being spun? Let's take the spin out of the world we're in, here on Unspun. Good evening, I'm Pat McCrory. Tonight, our Pioneers in Politics and Business series continues with someone who spent decades helping build consensus during some of Charlotte's most important moments. As a senior banker executive, Mac Everett helped transform Charlotte into a national banking center. But his role in this city went well beyond business. When Charlotte faced big civic challenges, Mac Everett was often the person asked to bring different sides together, whether it was race relations or a United Way fundraising campaign. He even helped win public support for Charlotte's transit plan, a decision that helps still shape the city today. Mac, it's great to have you in Unspun, and congratulations on being a pioneer in politics and business.
Well, thank you, Pat, very much. It's always great to be with you.
First, I want to find out, how did you get to Charlotte?
It's not a very interesting story. Andy and I were in Atlanta. We've been there for 9 years with the Trust Company of Georgia.
Andy, your wife.
Andy,
your
my wife.
Wonderful
wife. We've been there 9 years with the Trust Company of Georgia, which became SunTrust, which merged with BB&T to become Truist. So
I think you went to the University of Georgia, right?
Both of us went to the University of Georgia. I had a call from a friend, Neil McBride, who is a lawyer here at Robinson Bradshaw, and said that First Junior would like to talk to you about coming here to work. And so through Ed Crutchfield and John Georges, we had conversations, and we ended up coming in 1978 to Charlotte.
Wow, that's the year I came to Charlotte. Yeah. Same year, right out of Catawba College.
Great year for Charlotte,
No doubt about it. You know, when we moved to Charlotte, Charlotte was just coming out of some very difficult race relations due to desegregation, integration of schools, and things of this nature. But when I first got to know you, really, was during some race issues when I was mayor, and we had some major police shootings. In fact, over a 6-week period when I was at 1996, 97 time period, we had some very controversial shootings. And the city was about to explode. And I remember calling you up and going, after the last shooting, and going, we need the private sector's help and the religious community's help. Tell me your role in that.
Well, actually, there was a group that you and then County Commission Chair Parks Helms,
who was a great
brought
guy.
Together, headed by a wonderful lady.
Chairman Parks Helms of the County Commission.
Right, Emily Zimmerman, wonderful lady,
Yes.
and James Ferguson, the lawyer in
Civil
town,
rights leader.
Correct, came together to chair this small group. Claude Alexander, Ralph McMillan, and others.
Former city council member, Ralph McMillan.
There were probably 6 or 8 of us.
Right.
And Michael Marsicano at the time was sort of facilitating, bringing everybody together. Diane English was a part of all that.
Wonderful.
And we came together, and through several meetings decided we needed to have a community event, which we did in December of 1997, and brought 600 people together in the convention center. We broke down into groups. We looked at different issues throughout the city of Charlotte. And when we came back together, Pat, and reported on those issues, we looked at each other and said, we can't stop now. So what was then the Community Building Task Force became the Community Building Initiative, which exists today to address those issues in our community.
And really, since then, we haven't had, well, we almost had some issues when I was governor during a riot, but that really didn't have as much to do with race. It had, but similar issues of bringing the community together, and I think that same group helped us during the riot when I was governor in 2016.
Yeah, well, it's helped us in a lot of cases, I think, Pat. And I think it's a story about process, not the answer to a problem, but bringing people together to figure out where we go from here.
And to have communications before the events, not
Exactly.
just after the events.
Exactly, and build the relationships, Pat, throughout our community that allow us, when something happens, allows us to come together quickly.
Now, another time I called on you was I made you, when I got elected mayor in 1995, end of 95, I looked at an old 25-year transit plan that Richard Van Root and Harvey Gantt and other previous mayors had worked on, and Parks Helms too. And I looked at it, I didn't run on it, and I said, you know, this makes sense, but I didn't run on this issue, and it had been kind of shelved. It had cobwebs on it.
Yeah.
It was the Committee of 100 report. So I decided, after meeting with Bill Lee, by the way, chairman and CEO of Duke
One of my
Energy,
favorites.
one of the great guys,
Yep.
I asked him about it, and he said, you can wait until the pain arrives and do it then,
Yeah.
and it'll be an easy sell,
Yeah.
or you can do it now, but the pain hasn't arrived, and it's going to be a hard sell.
Yeah.
So I formed a committee of 10, put you on it, and you served on it to come up with a pragmatic plan to implement transit. Where's the money going to come from? And then Rick Ray, who was chairman, called me up at a moment's notice. He sold Raycom, had to move to
Right.
Florida. Who did I call? The troubleshooter, Mac Everett.
The ditch digger.
I call you the troubleshooter, and I said, will you head up the committee of 10? This is crucial for Charlotte's future. Tell me about your experience with that and the final proposal.
Well, again, it was a group of people coming together with different interests, actually, and I think that was what was so successful about it, Pat. And it's an easy answer when you look back at it, but it was not an easy answer then. And of course, the media was all over us and for us and against us, as was the community.
They weren't allowed to have secret meetings. This was all done in public.
Well, I'm gonna share a secret with you, Pat.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
yeah. We did not adjourn meetings. We recessed meetings so that a recess meeting we could come back together without posting the time.
things
and
you
day
didn't
back.
tell me as mayor.
Well, you shouldn't know that, but it all worked out well, obviously. And gosh, you look back at things like that and say, wow, why did we wait so long to do that? Kirby Smart is a head football coach at the University of Georgia, and Kirby has a saying. He says, if you run away from hard in life, you run into more hard.
Wow. Wow.
And that's what we finally did with that transit.
Well,
is
y'all
we
came
faced the
back to
hard.
me and said, we need a half-cent sales tax, but we need to go to the legislature to ask us to have a referendum. And I remember going, there's no way in heck. And I got Ed McMahon and Lyons Gray from Winston, took him out to Raleigh, bought him, I took 3 bottles of wine to convince Ed McMahon to be the mover and shaker in Raleigh and give us permissions. But I remember also you and others would go to Raleigh to help lobby for that, finally showing Charlotte's voice in Raleigh.
Yeah, yeah.
And
There's several instances of that, and I don't want to get off the transit, but I remember when First Union and Wachovia were coming together,
Yeah.
SunTrust actually wanted to be a bidder for one of the banks. And I went to Raleigh with Russell Robinson.
Wow.
And in 3 days, Russell had
Who
the
was
group.
a lawyer with
And just
Robinson
Bradshaw, and just one of the great guys, and recognized as one of the great corporate minds anywhere.
Right.
And the Eastern North Carolina guys, Bass Knight and Rand and those guys, in 3 days, Russell had legislation passed that wouldn't allow an out-of-state bank to get into the process.
And that changed Charlotte forever. I mean, that allowed also Texas and Florida to come into play in North Carolina. Changed our city forever. That one piece of legislation probably transformed Charlotte more than anything else. But
Well-
it took a couple of people to do it. No doubt about it. So transit got initiated. We went through a referendum. We went through another referendum, a recall referendum, and that committee and others stayed on focus to get this thing done. And who would have imagined what it's become because of the committee?
It's just unbelievable what's happened along the light rail, Pat, and the development there.
Well, the goal of that, I remember telling you the goal, simplify this thing and do what we can. Don't ask for what we can't do. So the next big thing, I mean, this was all in the 90s. It was just amazing that I was inheriting and some maybe created, was the Hornets in the arena. And we were going through a situation where George Shinn, the owner of the Hornets, wanted a new arena, and he was getting offers from other cities to go to New Orleans. Offered him $100 million or so, which was big bucks in those days. And I remember you picking me up in a First Union jet in Knoxville, Tennessee, because I was meeting with President Bush.
Yeah.
I was on the Homeland Security Committee after 9/11, and y'all came pick me up in the jet to go to Teterboro and then to the NBA headquarters or the Plaza Hotel.
Yeah, it was NBA headquarters.
And tell us about your recollection of that meeting, trying to keep the Hornets.
Well, it was the relocation committee, which David Stern chaired,
Yeah.
but was made up
My
of,
buddy,
of
David
your,
Stern.
your buddy. Yeah.
He didn't like me, and I had a tough time with him.
Right. But it was made up of other owners, NBA owners. And George Shinn had applied to move to New Orleans, and we were there to try to keep the Hornets here. Yeah. But frankly, we're not unhappy when they left. But David Stern, at the end of the meeting, I'll never forget, he called me over and he said, look, we're not going to stop the Hornets from leaving Charlotte, but we will get another NBA franchise for you. And that was the beginning of what was the Bobcats and Bob Johnson coming to town.
Well, we had you and maybe Pam Seifert, the city manager.
Nelson Schwab.
Nelson Schwab was a big player.
Yeah.
And
Jim Hance was a big player also. He was not with us on that trip, but
he helped with Johnson and Wales later on.
Yeah.
But I remember we went to the wrong place, first of all, and then we went to another place, got out of the car, and ESPN was waiting for us, and then I go up the elevators, and David Stern, first thing he says to me is, "You're late."
Yeah.
He was the hardball guy.
Yeah, no, he was. And he, he was nice to a couple of us and a little hard on a couple of others.
Yeah, it was a tough relationship. I knew he was the hardball lord,
Yeah.
So I had to be hardball back to them. I was the bad cop for Charlotte, but I had to represent the taxpayers too. So
for sure.
So then we go to the next block. Since Stern told you and others, we still plan to come back.
Yeah.
Tell us your role in getting the Hornets back, because I remember several meetings with you and your boss, Ken Thompson.
Yeah, right. And again, Nelson Schwab and Jim Hance and I kind of took that on.
Jim Hance with Bank of America, Executive Vice President.
Yeah, and we looked at the NBA announced that they would bring another franchise here. We had to find the owners, and there were several ownership groups that were interested. And we landed on Bob Johnson. Bob was from Washington, had started BET Network and sold it for a lot of money. And I'll never forget going to Bob and asking him to write a check for $300 million and for the franchise, which he did, and we were very pleased with it. He came to North Carolina to speak at the North Carolina Chamber meeting when I was chairing that group, and he started his speech by saying, "Can you imagine 3 white guys coming into my house asking me to write a $300 million check?" But he did, and to his credit, of course, brought Michael Jordan along with him as a minority owner, and a number of Charlotte business people.
I had actually a good relationship with him.
Yeah.
Pam Seifert and I went to his headquarters, which was an interesting meeting. I remember he gave me a leather jacket with BET on it, and I ended up giving it to a kid I mentored.
Yeah.
But that was an important thing for the NBA, though, to have the first minority owner of an NBA team.
No, it was.
And I think that helped at that time, although Larry Bird and some others
Larry
were
Bird
trying
was
to get, he came
exactly.
to the office.
Yep, that's exactly right.
But then the big issue was, how do we get a new arena after the referendum failed for an arena, baseball stadium, arts facility?
Yeah.
It failed, and then I remember going to your office with Ken Thompson and going, "Mayor, we have to build a new arena."
Yeah. Well, I think, of course, we built the arena on Tyvola thanks to Johnny Harris and his leadership out there, which was great. And the reason we went out there, we were looking at downtown at that point in time, but we went out there because it was free land, basically.
Right.
And in retrospect, it was a great thing to do, because I'm not sure we would have the downtown arena where we have it today had we not been out there and said, we've got to go downtown.
Yeah.
So I think it all works out in the long run. It was
And you and others worked with Pam Seifert, our great city manager, who's
Wonderful
underrated
city.
in the city, doesn't get the credit she deserves.
Agree.
She helped assemble land, some owned by the Bell Corporation,
That's
because
correct.
they were breaking up at the time, and their warehouses were there. It was warehouses and parking lots.
And their corporate offices were actually over on 5th Street
Exactly.
at that time. Yeah.
That's now the arena.
Yeah.
So you had a big role in that with, again, this team effort of about probably 5 to 10 people made it happen.
Well, it got to be a bigger group than that,
I
and
agree.
a lot of people involved in getting it done. But I think, remember we called things the Charlotte way?
Yeah.
And that was the Charlotte way.
And the troubleshooter, Mac Everett, was called to help.
the ditch digger. Bill Lee, John Belk, Bob Brown, Cliff Cameron, my great mentors, they had these wonderful ideas
Cliff
and everything.
Cameron,
they just needed,
who I think
they
you're
needed
the twin.
a ditch digger.
No doubt about it. All right, golf tournament, real quick. I want to get all these in that you were involved in. We had previous golf tournaments, a senior golf tournament and a PGA a long time ago.
Kemper Open in the 70s.
Kemper Open. You were active at Quail and worked with Johnny and others. You were with First Union. I say First Union, which became Wachovia, which became Wells Fargo. Tell me in a minute here, how did you and others make this wonderful golf tournament come back to Charlotte?
Well, it was a great opportunity to brand the new company, the new Wachovia, which it was the combination of First Union and the old Wachovia. So that was the start of it.
So it was a branding after the recession of 2008.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, no,
Actually,
it was 2000. It was before that. Our first golf tournament was 2003.
I keep forgetting all the different time periods.
But you know, we had an opportunity to build something new.
Yeah.
And again, Johnny was a great leader, and Johnny Harris was a great leader in this. And there were others involved, and Ken Thompson, obviously. But they asked me to chair the event, and I did for 16 years. But Patty, it's so much easier to start something with a vision than it is to change something. And so we took that opportunity with the first new spring date on the PGA Tour in 30 years to build what became the Wachovia Championship, Quail Hall Championship, Wells Fargo Championship, and then the Truist Championship.
And then a PGA Championship
and
a
Cup of
President's
PGA Championship,
Cup
yeah. And we are so fortunate to have Truist as our title sponsor. They're so community driven, and that's exactly what we needed.
Which is a huge move for Charlotte when they made Charlotte its headquarters.
Yes.
The movement continues.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to get into United Way, but you helped save United Way too. But I do want to have time to talk about the future. But one more thing, Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Will you explain Goodfellas to the audience? And I'm honored to be on the executive board, but charity and giving back is a major part of this community.
A 110-year-old organization, the Goodfellas Club, started here in Charlotte 110 years ago. Every year since then, we've come together at a Christmas event prior to Christmas to raise money for people in our community who are hardworking people but hit some kind of bump in the road, whether it's medical expense, whatever it might, losing a job, whatever it might be, and to help them get over that one-time expense of rent or what that challenge is. And it just goes on and on and on and gets better and better and better. It helps more and more people in this community and goes unnoticed by so many people.
It's a camaraderie that I've been going since 1982, I think.
I've been going over 40 years, and it's Pat, it's the beginning of Christmas for me.
Yeah, I love
every
it.
year.
And all these men coming together, and there's a women's.
The Good Friends.
The Good Friends, and the women are doing great.
Awesome.
It's kind of interesting. We're segregated, but we all agree with that segregation for that one day where there's camaraderie among the women and camaraderie among the men. And the Goodfellows comes to the
Good Friends.
The leaders come to each one.
Yeah, and we talked about bringing the two organizations together at one time and mutually decided that Charlotte's better off with the two separate organizations.
I'm honored to be on their executive committee now. And how many years were you?
Well, I've been to over 40 meetings, and I've been on the board for, I don't know, I'm emeritus now, which is a great word.
The only mistake you made, you started letting me tell the jokes during the meeting, which we're going to have to change sooner or later. I want to talk about the future. Let's just don't talk about the past. Tell me some of the challenges, based on your experience, that you think Charlotte, North Carolina has for the future.
Pat, you'll remember, there's one more quick pass, when Ed and Charlie Shelton moved to Charlotte, and Ed went to the Chamber of Commerce, and we started something called Advantage Carolina, and we came out with a number of projects that need to be done. Some of those projects took 20 and 25 years to do. We need to start those projects today for Charlotte, for the future of Charlotte, and we've got wonderful young leadership in Charlotte, but what we don't do well is we have the challenges and the leaders, we don't connect them very well, and we need to do a better job of that. So that's one thing. The political environment certainly bothers me today a little bit. We used to have a group in the middle, regardless of the political body, that would always sit down and talk, and then
we had a two-party town.
Yeah, right. So that is something. One thing keeps getting with me, though, is for years the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce was an advocate of small business and a supporter and a bringing together place for small business in Charlotte. when the chamber and the regional partnership merged, that became more of just an economic development organization, and I think we left small businesses behind. There's a for-profit chamber now today that does some of it, but I really worry about that because forever we've said that small business, these great announcements are wonderful, but small business that's the real core of Charlotte.
You've also been very active in communicating, since you were a member of the Committee of 10 on Transit, which I appointed, infrastructure. I mean, we're growing. We're
Pat.
500 people to 800 people a week in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Infrastructure.
Well, infrastructure, and I don't mean just roads. I'm thinking water, power, all those kinds of things beginning to be taxed, sewer. And it's not just Charlotte proper, but if you look at Pineville and Matthews, people can't afford Charlotte, a lot of people anymore, so they're moving out to those places and putting tremendous pressure on the infrastructure in these smaller little communities that surround Charlotte. Not unlike Atlanta, as people moved out to Sandy Springs and places like that. So we really need to pay attention to the infrastructure of the Charlotte region. And what that says to me is we need to bring people from the region together.
You had a quote you told me one time from a business leader where differentiating the city and the region and why it was so important. I remember you told me.
Well, we started, the regional partnership actually started as something called the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance of Council. Yeah. And Pete Sloan, one of the great ones, Lance Crackers, CEO, I asked Pete to chair that, which he did, and we were meeting business leaders from 15 counties on the 42nd floor of then the First Union Tower, the jukebox building. And Pete opened the meeting by saying, folks, if you go in and flush that toilet, it's not going to stop at the Mecklenburg County line. And he made a great point. What happens here impacts everybody. And I think people have begun to now appreciate that Charlotte is the core of a big region, not a separate city. Whereas before, you didn't want to go out into the region with the name Charlotte. You wanted to do something else. But today, I think people say, yes, that's the engine.
Even the regional people go, I'm from Charlotte, even though they live in Lincoln County or Stanley County.
Right.
They're really from the Charlotte region.
And it's no longer Charlotte, North Carolina. It's just Charlotte.
No doubt about it, no doubt. One word to describe the future of Charlotte. What do you think's Charlotte's future?
Well, I'm very optimistic because I'm an optimistic person. I don't think you need to live a day without being positive about things. So I'm very positive about it. I think that, think about that, as when we get sick sometimes, we get real sick before we go to the doctor. Yeah. And I think we probably aren't sick enough yet. But once we get there, we'll rebound and do some things.
Once the pain arrives, we move.
Yeah.
But we need to anticipate the pain now.
Yeah. Well, we're playing for that.
Mac Everett, I'm disappointed you didn't put an application in for mayor. You would have been a good one. So you've been a great leader in many other ways.
Thank you, Pat, very much.
Congratulations for being a pioneer of business and politics.
Well, thank you for your friendship.
Thank you very much, Mac. When Charlotte voters initially rejected a referendum that would have helped fund a new arena, arts facilities, and a baseball stadium, a major question immediately emerged. What do we do with the Charlotte Coliseum on Tyvola Road? The Hornets had already moved to New Orleans. They had been the primary tenant, paying the rent and filling the seats. Suddenly, one of the crown jewels of our city had become a money-losing white elephant. Sure, it could host concerts and the occasional college basketball tournament, but that wasn't enough to help keep the books in the black. So working with leaders in the private sector, including Mac Everett and then Wachovia CEO Ken Thompson, we began looking for a solution. And that solution started with a simple but ambitious idea: bring the NBA back to Charlotte. We reached out to the league and there was interest. The problem was our existing arena no longer fit what the NBA wanted. It was too large for modern professional basketball. It lacked luxury suites. The upper deck seats felt miles away from the court. And perhaps more importantly, it wasn't downtown, meaning restaurants, hotels, and other businesses saw little benefit from game nights. So Charlotte did what Charlotte has often done at its best. We adapted. we developed a strategy that matched the new realities of professional sports without asking taxpayers for additional taxes. We sold the Tyvola property for redevelopment. We assembled land downtown that was largely warehouses and surface parking lots. And we made the case that Charlotte deserved another shot at Major League Basketball. It took a team to recruit a team. Business leaders, civic leaders, elected officials, people willing to think long-term instead of simply managing the crisis of the moment. And it worked. The Bobcats arrived. Eventually, they became the Hornets once again, and the arena helped transform Uptown into a year-round destination, hosting not only NBA games, but major concerts, ACC tournaments, and countless events that brought people and investment into the heart of our city. It's a reminder that sometimes a setback forces you to rethink the future. In this case, losing a team ultimately led to building something bigger than basketball. Now, if the Hornets could just start winning playoff games, apparently even the best strategic plans have their limits. Well, that's the truth as I see it. I'll see you next time on Unspun.
A production of PBS Charlotte.